All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are going to be talking about Polite Society, a little movie that I really wish more people would go out and see. And that's why I decided to squeeze this episode in. I've got Megan Kearns from Spoilerpiece Theater joining me for this one. And, we'll get to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, next week most likely or sometime soon. This movie, I wanted to kind of give a little extra spotlight to. Obviously, we'll get into spoilers and all that, but you should go see the movie because it's great. And based on my conversations with people online, everybody seems to be seeing it in an empty theater. That's how it was for me. And I don't know. I don't really know if it's not getting marketed or promoted or whatnot, or people just aren't interested, but it's a really fun film. Go see it. And hopefully you enjoy this conversation about some of the films that might have inspired it. Before we get to the conversation, I do want to remind you, of course, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever it is that you're listening right now. And of course, we're on all the major podcast apps. You could also follow me on social media at Piecing Pod. I've been using Instagram a lot more lately, so check me out over there. I'm starting to build that up, but I'm, of course, on Twitter like 24/7, which is a really stupid thing for me to do. But that's where you can find me most of the time. I also have the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. So join us over there. Some really fun movie conversations. And last but not least, do not forget, we have a Patreon, and right now is like the best time to sign up for the Patreon. If you've been listening to Piecing It Together for a while and you really like what I do here on the show, and maybe you've checked out some of the other things I do, like Awesome Movie Year or my music career, check it out. We've got a lot of great content. There's like 4 or 5 advanced episodes of Piecing It Together at the moment. I think today, when this goes up, we'll be posting a brand new Awesome Movie Year bonus episode on there. And I'm currently prepping for release 3 soundtrack albums from films that I scored that will be up on the Patreon in the next few weeks. So, lots of content hitting that Patreon. And that doesn't even count what I'm planning for 2024. A lot of stuff. So anyway, check it out. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon that combines all the content from all these places. So check it out, and let's talk about Polite Society. All right, let's talk about Polite Society. Megan Kearns from Spoilerpiece Theater is with us. Megan, how are you doing?
I'm great, David. How are you?
I am great. I am excited to talk about this movie. As we talked about a little bit before we, got to this conversation, not enough people are seeing this movie. So
No,
hopefully a couple of listeners of this show will actually go out and check it out. I think we all just need to do our parts and push people to the theater because, it's such a fun movie.
agreed. I love it.
Yeah. So before we get to it, though, too much, it is your first time on the show. Tell my listeners a little about you and what you do.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, I am a film critic and a podcaster. I co host the weekly film podcast Spoilerpiece Theater, where we don't care about spoilers. We just want to talk about movies. I do that with my co hosts, Evan and Dave. And I also write film reviews for Edge Media Network, a queer website. And yeah, and I've been a film critic and writer for many years. And I love movies. And I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very happy to have you on the show. And I think this is an interesting movie to talk about in our whole puzzle pieces format, because I think in a lot of ways it kind of wears its inspirations on its sleeve, but at the same
Yes.
time, I think it does some pretty interesting and fun stuff with them. So we'll get into a lot of that as we're going along. I do want to ask, was this a movie that just kind of came out of nowhere for you? Because it certainly was for me. I hadn't heard much about it. Maybe that's why no one's seeing it, but maybe it's just not getting pushed very hard. But it's just one of those things that we're obviously online constantly, and so I'm seeing other podcasters and stuff talk about it. But
Mhm.
as far as any kind of general knowledge of it, I saw the trailer a few times, and that was basically it.
Yeah, so I saw it for the first, I've seen it twice now, and I saw it for the first time back in January at Sundance. And I had heard of it before it premiered at Sundance. I had
Okay.
heard that there was a wedding heist comedy that was feminist that was coming, and was very excited. And I always try to keep abreast of indie films and women directed films. So this was definitely on my radar. So when I heard that it, when it did come to Sundance, I was like, this was one of the top films that I had to see, and I'm so glad I did. And it's one that has stayed with me. And then when I saw it again in the theaters to revisit it, it was still a delight. So yes, so there's definitely not enough buzz about it, which is unfortunate. But yes, it had been on my radar for a bit.
Right on. Yeah, and I mean, it's good that people are kind of banging the drum for it because
Yes.
yeah, it definitely I think it's going to be a word of mouth, maybe like a long-term grower, but I guess we'll see what happens with that. But let's start getting into some puzzle pieces here. What do you have for your first piece?
Well, my first piece is I feel like this is a cheat because like as you're saying, this film really does wear its references and allusions and its inspirations on its sleeve. And also the director Nida Manzoor also said that this was one of her inspirations for the film, and that's Crouching
Nice.
Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is
Sure.
also the poster for the film is also in Ria's bedroom, the protagonist. And
Sure.
yeah, I mean this I love Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, another amazing action film, feminist action film that I love that focuses on three women. And very similarly, this focuses on the relationship between the sisters and Ria and her friends. And it's just like they're Pakistani British. Um, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon obviously is focusing on East Asian actors and characters. And there's fight sequences that are great and very riveting to watch. So that is definitely my first puzzle piece.
Yeah, no, great one to kick it off with. And yeah, I mean, both movies like so many tones, so many like reference points from like different genres kind of getting blended together into like just this stew of like exciting visual flair and
Yes.
interesting things to watch. Like there's so much going on in this movie, and something like that's going to kind of come up in a lot of my puzzle pieces. I feel like a lot of them kind of focus mostly on the central relationship of the characters. Not all of them, but a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them. And I think that that is like kind of the main thing, even though it's an action movie, even though it's like kind of a heist movie, like you said, and it's a wedding thing. And like there's a lot of other things going on. I think that centrally relationship between Rhea and her friends is, and then also Rhea and her sister
Mm-hmm.
are like the things that really drive the movie and the thing that make it stick. And so yeah, that's going to come up a lot in my pieces, and definitely for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as a great way to kick it off with that, and also referencing the action and a lot of that like kind of over the top visuals of it all. I will just
Mm-hmm.
jump right on top and go to really, you could say, the films of Edgar Wright, but specifically Scott Pilgrim versus the World for my first puzzle piece
Oh.
here. Over the top, heavily stylized action, a lot of like pop culture referencing comedy, and a lot of very snappy dialogue, very
Yes.
clever, cute characters who are just totally on top of their game at every second, even as they're kind of also losing their game at every second too. Rhea is a great character, and like that's like my favorite thing about the movie is Rhea, and it's wild that this is her first feature. Like, when I
Right?
read that, I just that kinda blew my mind. I mean, I know she's, I think, done a little TV and shorts and stuff like that, but her first feature, that is wild because she just commands this presence of this film and, like, really just sells this kinda character who is just so, like, such a goof, but so, like, sure of herself at the same
Yes.
time, and, like, just thrusts herself into every situation. It's wild, and, she does such a great job of that, and, like I said, the films of Edgar Wright, I would also maybe throw a little Hot Fuzz because of the, kinda secret
Mm-hmm.
society type thing that we
Oh
got going
yeah.
on with the family that her sister is marrying into, which, by the way, yes, spoiler away, on the show, so
I feel like it's hard to not spoil certain facets of this film.
Yeah, you kinda have to because
Yes,
there's a lot that is kind of shrouded in mystery throughout most of the movie, and, in order to discuss any of that stuff, you kinda have to go there, you know?
totally.
So, yeah, but Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, my first piece. What do you got for your next one?
That's such a great one, and I can't believe I didn't think of that. Like that's just
Oh, right
such a
on.
great obvious one. My second piece is staying in the action vein. Is Kill Bill. which
Sure.
again was another film that Nida Manzoor said that she was inspired by. But aside from that, that was the vibe I got right off the bat, just because of the chapters and how stylized the
Hmm.
chapter titles are, and the font and the design of them, as well as kind of the brass score, which is very reminiscent of the Green Hornet TV series theme in Kill Bill that's
Sure.
happening here in Polite Society, and which, of course, Kill Bill is inspired by Lady Snowblood, so which itself is an homage. So I love that
Sure.
this is kind of an homage to an homage. But yeah, and again, the being female centric, again, the really striking visuals and action sequences and very stylized, and again filled with pop culture references. So yes, that is my next piece. Another great action film.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah, so good, and I would say Scott Pilgrim inspired by Kill Bill as well. So I mean, this is all kind of
Yes.
going in on each other in a way. But
Right.
yeah, I think that that's a great one to bring here. And yeah, you're so right about the soundtrack. The soundtrack, almost more than anything, even though it is over the top stylized action, and that is a definite reference point. I think the soundtrack is so inspired by that soundtrack, all the
Mm-hmm.
brass, like you were saying, like it really definitely feels like it's going for that same vibe there with the music. So yeah,
Yes.
great one there.
Thank you.
Uh, I just said, Scott Pilgrim is probably inspired by Kill Bill. I'm gonna go with another one that's probably inspired by Kill Bill for my next puzzle piece. Uh, Birds of Prey, the
Yes.
DC superhero team up movie. Of course, Harley Quinn and all of her superpowered girls that all get together with, again, a central theme of that friendship. That yes, there's all this stylized action and violence and
Mm-hmm.
craziness going on in that movie, but when it comes down to it, it's this team, the Birds of Prey, and like they all matter to each other more than anything going on in their own personal lives or any of the superhero action going on around them that they have to like deal with. Like first and foremost, it's that sisterhood, it's that
Mm-hmm.
friendship, and I think that makes it a great companion piece here in a way.
I agree. And I'm so excited that you brought up Birds of Prey because I love Birds of Prey so much. It's such a
It's
fun film.
awesome.
Yeah, it's so visually stunning. It's so fun. It's just a joy and a delight to watch, which is exactly what this is. Even though there's many differences, of course, narratively, it's still got that kind of, frenetic energy going that is just such a fun vibe. So I love that you mentioned Birds of Prey because it's so good.
Awesome. Awesome. I hadn't thought about this before, but with Rhea being like obsessed with being a stunt woman, I bet she loves Birds of Prey, the
Oh
character.
yeah.
You know, seems like a Rhea movie for sure.
Right,
So
right. I know. And even when she's writing her fan letters, her fan emails to the stunt woman who is her idol, she's like, "You might be doing, a Marvel or a Star Wars," and this,
sure.
which I love is that she says a Star War and not Star Wars.
Yeah.
But yeah, and of course, Birds of Prey is DC, but I kind of like that still, in that superhero
Yeah.
vein.
Yeah. And I like it. Isn't, if I remember correctly, wasn't the stunt woman, wasn't she actually doing a Marvel? Like that's why she wasn't writing back. Like I think
Hmm.
in her letter at the end. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
she's doing a Marvel.
Yeah, and she's a real stunt, like she's an actual stunt woman. Like she's been a stunt
Yeah.
woman for decades, and for huge names like Angelina Jolie and many other actresses. So yeah, so I think that I love that she's like, yeah, I was doing a Marvel.
Yeah. That's great.
Mhm.
Well, what do you got for your next one?
So my next one is, now I have to say up front that I am ashamed to say I am not into Bollywood films. Not because I don't want to be, but
Mhm.
I just they're a weak spot in my film watching. But
Yeah.
I think it's very clear that, I mean, this was inspired by Bollywood. There's a Bollywood dance scene in the middle of the film, like during the wedding.
Sure.
But the Bollywood film that I think it actually takes inspiration from is Devdas, which is the song that's from that film is Mar Dala, and Ria's doing a dance routine to that. And I watched a video of that dance routine from the film Devdas, and the dress that the woman is wearing is almost the exact same dress as what Ria's wearing when she's doing her routine, like the same green and gold. And
Oh
I was like,
wow.
well, there we go.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're bringing this one up because yeah, that is also a little bit of a blind spot for me. And the fact that she wears that dress, I mean, it's clear that there's a lot of Bollywood influence in
Yes.
some of the music, the action sequences, the costuming, and so
Hmm.
it definitely needs to be a part of the conversation. So I'm glad you brought that one in there. That's great.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. I also love that with Ria's dance, like she's also incorporating a lot of fight motions, like especially at the
Sure.
end. I just love that she's incorporating that into a Bollywood dance and like her fists clenched and other action moves. It's great.
Definitely. Definitely. I will go with this is a recent one, but I felt like I would include it anyway. I'm going to go with Turning Red, the recent Pixar
Oh,
movie.
love that film.
Like I was just saying, how much I love Rhea as a character,
Hmm.
and she reminds me so much like one of the group of friends at the center of Turning Red. Like there's such obviously that's an animated movie, so they're a little bit more overly animated than a live
Hmm.
action film, but they're like such like rabid little weirdos, and, like she kind of is too.
Yes, yes.
And it definitely just reminded me of the kind of girls, and also Ria's friend group. They're also like all just such little oddballs, and they are a lot
They
of fun to
are.
watch. And
Yes.
that, like I said, is like kind of the central thing of the movie is just their friendship and their relationship and how they really have each other's backs, even though they kind of are getting lost in these situations in a way, but they come out on top. And
Hmm.
again, that just reminded me a lot of the friend group at the center of Turning Red, even though they're both very different movies otherwise.
Right, right. Well, no, both at the core of both of them are that camaraderie and that friendship. And, Ria is a teen girl and the protagonist of Turning Red, she's, obviously a teen, the allegory for turning into a red panda.
Sure.
So, yeah, no, I think the parallels are there. I think it works really nicely.
Awesome. What do you got for your next one?
Okay. My next one, veering away from the action realm. My next one, I kind of did them both together, but I say two or should I separate them? Because I think of them
Let's
in
do it.
tandem.
You could do two. You could
Okay.
do
I
two.
think of them in tandem with each other. Pride and Prejudice and Little Women.
Okay.
Because for each of them, they're giving commentary on social norms for girls and women, the expectations to get married, which is very much happening in Ria and Lena's family, and how excited her parents are that she's finally getting married, even though Lena
Hmm.
herself is pretty young. The sisterly bonds, and very, especially in Little Women, thinking about the character of Jo and how she wants to focus on her career and she doesn't want to get married, which is very divergent from the way her older sister Meg wants to get married. I was thinking very much along the lines of Rhea and Lena, and how Rhea's like, no, no, you need to be an artist. And Lena's like, no, I'm done with that. That was the fake me.
Sure.
This is the real me now that I'm getting married and focused on marriage. And so it very much reminded me of both of those books and films.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny, like, this movie is like this big over the top action movie, but at the same time there is that, a lot of that is there for sure.
Hmm.
And yeah, Little Women, a great example of that for sure. And Pride and Prejudice also works for that. But yeah, I mean that sisterly bond and her thinking she knows what's best for the sister, but like it's
Yes.
kind of, that's a great one. I like that a lot. And
Oh, thanks.
I think that's a great piece to include. Let's see, what am I gonna go? I'm gonna go with Get Out for my next one.
Nice.
That's kind of good parallel here to that, again, that person who, is gonna be marrying into this family, and in this case, it's the sister knows right away from the get-go, like, there's something off here, this is a bad idea,
Yep.
don't do it, but she's not gonna listen. Whereas in Get Out, it's Lil Ray Howery, and, and he's great. He's always great, whatever
So
he's in.
good.
But of course, the sister turns out to be right. There's some evil, weird, creepy shit going on, and Lil Ray Howery was right in Get Out. So there was some creepy, weird, evil shit going on. So yeah, both of them have exactly that same thing going on.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Yeah, especially for families that everything seems to be so too perfect, too nice from the
Yes,
outside. Yeah.
absolutely. What do you got next?
Okay. My next one is, well, thinking along those lines, because I'm like, where do I go from here? I'm also thinking of kind of along those lines of Get Out, that things are not as they appear, that the surface appears too good to be true, but there's a lot more sinister, insidious, nefarious machinations going on. I
Sure.
also think of Stepford Wives, which of course
Yes.
Rhea also makes a reference to Stepford Wives when she's talking to Lena about, and I love, by the way, I love that one of the reasons Rhea knows something is awry is because Lena's wearing cardigans. Like, and I love it. And she tells her friends, she's like, she's wearing cardigans. And it's like so funny. And also when the fiance, when he says like, well, Lena's really kind, and she's like, you're not kind, you're arrogant. Like, I love that. But yes, definitely Stepford Wives, and how Lena now wants to abandon her career and become a wife and focus on that and focus on her husband to be. And also, I kind of got the vibe in polite society that, I mean, part of me is like, this it may be too fun and fluffy for this, but also I got kind of like a sense like it's a little bit of a commentary that you shouldn't have to give up your art and your dreams in order to, quote unquote, settle down or to get married or anything like that. Like, your partner will support you rather than, having you give up those core parts of yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I think that this movie interestingly comes from maybe a time kind of that like where people already know that and like it doesn't need to spend as much time on it,
Right, right.
whereas the Stepford Wives was like revolutionary for its time,
Hmm.
so I actually haven't seen it in years, and I happen to be rewatching it for a podcast in like 3 weeks, 2 3 weeks now, so
Nice.
I'm looking forward to revisiting that. But yeah, that was on my list as well. I definitely thought of that, and yeah, it's a great one to include here, and definitely, with what that family is that she's marrying into, it fits so perfectly. So
Yes.
yeah, great one. I'm gonna go with one that maybe is a little out of left field, but
Ooh, love it.
I have my reasonings here. I'm gonna go with Wayne's World for my next puzzle piece here.
Oh,
So here's the thing.
that's amazing.
Okay. So here's the thing, and I guess in a way you could even go with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure for this as well. So
Hmm.
here's the thing: both of these movies, all three of these movies, they kind of have stonery kind of vibes to them, but at the same time, they're not smoking weed, they're not drunk, they just are kind of goofy characters, and Rhea and her buddies are just kind of they're silly, they're kind of ridiculous, they just have this great little fun friendship, and they feel kind of stonery, but they're not. Like they're just kind of like fun loving, high on life kind of kids, and that's kind of the thing that I love about, Wayne's World. Like they're not like burnouts or anything, even though we kind of associate like because it's rock music and all that, like they're just kind of hanging out and just having fun, and that's all there is to it. They're not like actually getting trashed or anything like that. So that's where my connection comes with the friendship and just like the kind of goofballs that they are, like Wayne and Garth or Bill
Yeah,
and
that's
Ted.
that's such a good one, and I love that it's so eccentric. Especially, I feel like especially Bill and Ted, because there's such a sweetness to both of those characters, as
Yeah.
well as to their friendship. So no, I think you made a good case for it, even though at first it's like, wait, what?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, I mean, we're just saying about how like, Priya Kansara, this is her first role. Like, I mean,
Yes.
maybe that's, maybe like a straight up buddy comedy type thing. Like maybe that's like a thing that comes next. Like I'm very interested to see what she ends up doing. Her sister, the actress that plays her, Ritu Arya, she's great
Hmm.
too. And maybe
Yes,
put them together in something else.
I
Yeah,
agree. Yep, they have a really great rapport.
absolutely. What do you got next?
Well, speaking of sisterly rapport, that ties in, dovetails nicely into my next film, which is A League of Their Own.
Okay.
Which it feels a little also kind of in out of left field, but yeah. But I was thinking about how Rhea and Lena fight during the movie, like actually physically fight as well as verbally spar, and it kind of reminded me of the rivalry between Dottie and Kit in A League of Their Own, but also the focus on physical activity and how Rhea is so into being a stunt woman and does her videos and practices, and also how there's again female friendship and the camaraderie between the sisters as well as all of the other friends, and also how Kit very much wants an unconventional life and she wants to focus on her career and her dream of being a baseball player, whereas Dottie is the more reticent one who wants a more domestic, conventional life, being, a wife and Kit really has to convince her. And so I kind of got that vibe with Rhea trying to convince Lena, like, no, this is not you. This is not really okay. You have to get out of
Sure.
this. So
Right on. Yeah, no, that's not one that I had thought of, but I think that's great. And yeah, again, like just a great camaraderie between those friends and like
mm-hmm,
how they all kind of bring the best out of each other in the long run, even with, everything they go through in the process of that. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah, good one right there. I like that.
Thanks.
I will go back to the action again for my next puzzle
Yeah,
piece
do it.
and more superhero action. Let's go with Kick Ass for my next one.
Okay.
Again, just, with Rhea, I'm not making fun of her. I think she's great, but
She
just
is
this kind of,
great.
she's just so great. But this unfounded overconfidence that she has reminded me so much of the characters in Kick-Ass. They kind of like will themselves into being superheroes, even though like they don't really have any, reason to think that they were going to be able to be good at it. They just are like, they just go for it and it works out,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and Rhea, she's just, I'm going to be able to kick ass, and sure enough, she kicks ass. So
That she does.
yeah,
Through sheer willpower, she is the Fury.
absolutely, she is the Fury for sure.
Like that, I also love that she has her own tagline.
Yeah, I know that is a good tagline too, right?
Right?
Well, what do you got next?
My next one is, I mean, we got to pick something that encapsulates the heist element. So for
Okay,
me, this is Ocean's 8 slash Ocean's 11, or really the Ocean's films altogether,
sure,
but specifically Ocean's 8, just because that is a women centric heist film.
sure.
And it has that very fun vibe again where the stakes are not really high, which sounds funny because when I feel like when you actually describe the plot of Polite Society, like it sounds kind of serious in a way, but
Mm-hmm.
but like the stakes don't feel high at all. It just feels effortless and fun and very much kind of evoking that stoner comedy you were talking about
Sure.
earlier. And so very much I feel the same way that there's a heist happening. Actually, there's multiple heists in Polite Society. I love that first they're trying to find dirt on the fiance, and then later there's the
Oh yeah.
heist of getting Lena out of the wedding. But yes, I love a good heist, and I love those heist elements here as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You got to go to the Ocean's movies when talking about a heist in a movie. It's just like it's almost like a written law of the podcast. So
Right?
that works for me. I will go with so this one. I don't know. This one's kind of a little bit of a weird one. I was thinking about
Ooh.
like later era Kevin Smith movies. Um, like the bad ones, but this is a good movie. So I was thinking of like Yoga Hosers and Tusk and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, like the recent
Oh.
Kevin Smith movies where it gets this feeling of like kind of pure pop culture reference. Like where it's like there's no question. Like we are watching a movie where these people are making a movie. It's a movie. Hey, look at us. This is a movie. You know what I mean? And like I feel like that's kind of the vibe of recent Kevin Smith movies. And I feel like that's the vibe here, except for in Polite Society, they remembered to include funny jokes and great action moments and some great character beats and fun characters to watch. And that's the thing that's missing from a lot of these recent Kevin Smith movies. But I feel like the vibe though is kind of similar in that way.
All right, all right.
It's an interesting one, but
Yeah, I mean, hey, if that's what it makes you think of, I think that's important, right?
there you go. Absolutely. So I only have one more piece. Do you have any more pieces?
I do.
Right
Yeah,
on.
my next piece is, I mean, I was gonna say, I feel like again, I can't not say at least this facet, and it might be a spoiler though. So, but
Spoil away.
okay, the fact that this film is dealing with fertility testing, secret fertility testing, and cloning, and those sci-fi elements, I couldn't not think of one of my favorite series, Orphan Black, which is all about clones, all about secret fertility testing, all about gender and science and the ethics around that. So
Hmm.
definitely came to mind while was watching this, while the reveal of what really is going on with the plot is happening.
Okay, interesting. I haven't watched that show. I think I did like know that it had something to do with cloning, but like, yeah, I hadn't watched that before, so I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, that's an interesting one. And it is weird, like the cloning aspects. Like we were just talking about, like the safetiness, the silliness of it, almost like a stoner type thing. Like
Hmm.
if you really like dig into the cloning aspect of what the mom wants to do, like then things get kind of dark, but it doesn't want to
Yeah.
focus there. It just doesn't want to. It
No,
wants
no.
to have fun with it.
Totally. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's keeping it very, very light and fluffy. Yeah. Which that's what I'm saying. Like, it sounds so weird because, like, when I actually was describing the plot to someone, I was like, oh, that makes it sound like a really, like,
Right.
dark, morbid movie. But no, it's not that.
Just depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Totally.
But
Totally.
my last puzzle piece is I got to go with Booksmart for my last one.
Oh, great film.
Yeah, another one about this kind of age group of women who are, there. It's a totally different kind of movie. That's more of just a straightforward comedy, where this being, more of an action comedy. But,
Hmm.
the attitudes, the sense of humor, like the vibe of this particular generation's kind of humor and the way that they kind of interact with one another. And Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever, they totally feel like people who would be friends with Rhea. Like they feel like they would just be right there with her and her friends in this movie. And they all seem like they come from, like they could be in the same class, basically. They seem like they come from that same kind of school, the same kind of era of girls, and have the same kind of fun.
I love Booksmart. It's such a good film.
Right on.
That
Right
is a
on.
good one. Yeah, definitely.
Well, do you have any more pieces you want to bring up?
I do. Actually, I have one more, and then I have kind of an umbrella, which
Okay.
sounds weird because, yeah, so I read an interview that Nida Manzoor did where she talked about the films that she grew up with. And so so there's a few that are kind of more
Okay.
loose rather than like specific films. But anyway, I'll tell you my last official piece.
All right.
My last official piece is a very new film. Um, it's Rye Lane, the British rom com,
Oh yeah. I
which
haven't gotten to see that yet. I've seen a lot of
ah,
people talking about it.
it's so good. Yes, you definitely should see it. It's delightful. It's lovely, but it has a very similar vibe in the sense that it's very vibrant and colorful and fun. And the two characters who are falling for each other in kind of the walking and talking around the city style of film,
Sure.
there are these fantastical moments where when one is like recounting a memory or an incident that happened, then you will see it play out as if they're like watching a movie or watching a play unfold. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like breaking the boundaries of reality in a way that kind of reminded me sort of what was happening here in the film, in not such
Okay.
a strict sense but kind of a loose sense. And I don't know, I just there's something about it that I just kept getting the Rye Lane vibes. Maybe
Right
because they're
on.
both
Sounds
British films.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds a little like rom-com Family Guy, but
I hadn't thought about that, but I won't be able to
this is like
unthink it
that one
now.
time when,
Right, right.
but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to watching that. Yeah, like I
It's
said, I
so
heard great
good.
things about it. So, so you got to watch an interview where she talked about some of her favorites. Is that what you got to see?
Yeah, so for the press notes of this film, for screenings, there was an interview that she did, and she specifically talked about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and Kill Bill, but she also talked about how what she was inspired by was the relationship between herself and her own sister, and that she wanted to see a South Asian action hero, hence why she wrote Rhea the way she did, wanting to be a stunt woman.
Hmm.
And she said she wanted to infuse the films that she grew up with, which were The Matrix, Bollywood films, and Jackie Chan films, which I thought was really
Sure.
interesting. Yeah, and
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The Jackie Chan films are so much fun, and that's the thing. Like they like never take themselves too seriously, and neither
Right.
does this movie. You know,
No.
it wants to just be a fun time, and that's that. You know, but I could see, you know, The Matrix kind of goes along with Scott Pilgrim with that like heavily stylized,
Yes.
special effects action, and so yeah, that's a cool one to include there as well. So I like that. That's great. I will read down our list of puzzle pieces here, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts. We talked about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Kill Bill, Birds of Prey, Devdas, Turning Red, Pride and Prejudice, Little Women, Get Out, Stepford Wives, Wayne's World and Bill and Ted, A League of Their Own, Kick-Ass, Ocean's 8, Kevin Smith movies, Orphan Black, Booksmart, and Rye Lane. And then we threw in a couple extras from the director herself. But yeah, really interesting stuff all around. Like a lot of, fun over the top action, like stylized action, a lot of like, friend groups and like what that means to these people, like in the midst of everything else going on in the movie. Like we've been talking about, like the core friendship is really like the main thrust of the film, I think. And so yeah, I don't know. Is there any other closing thoughts, anything that we didn't quite get to while we were talking puzzle pieces that you wanted to bring up?
No, I mean the only other thing I would say, which I mean, but I said it earlier, is I think in addition to the sisterly bond and the core friend group and all of that, I think it's very clear that this is a very feminist film, which I adore. It's kind of a
Hmm.
nice bonus on top of it, just because there's commentary, like there's little bits of commentary here and there, like when the mom makes a comment on somebody being not thin enough, like she has chubby
Mm.
ankles, they call her out on that, and like they talk about in the friend group, they get all excited about taking down the patriarchy when they're
Yeah,
talking about this wedding, and like it's just, but it's such a fun light touch to it, so it just, there's just such a delightful energy to it, and I think it's such a joy to watch, and it was a joy to rewatch, and I can't wait to see it again, and I hope more people see it for
absolutely.
that reason because it's so fun.
Yes, please go see this movie if you haven't yet. And yeah, I completely agree. Just a really light, fun movie with a really fun group of friends at the center of it. So yeah, everybody go see this movie. And Megan, is there another movie you watched recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yes. So it's not out yet, or actually, it may be. It's coming out very soon. It's coming out in like a couple of weeks. Celine Song's Past Lives. It is a
Mm.
beautiful, stunning film. It's one of the best films I've seen this year. It's so lovely. It's a lovely romance.
I was at the theater a few weeks ago and the trailer started and someone in the theater went, "Oh, yes!" And I was like, "That dude is psyched for this
He's
movie." Yeah, I can't wait
pumped.
to see it.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. And it's funny that I saw the trailer before Polite Society when I went to rewatch it. And I started crying watching the trailer just because I was reminded of all the amazing things in the film.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice. That's
it's a good
awesome.
one. It's so good. It's lovely.
I can't wait to see it. Can't wait. Well, Megan, thank you so much for doing the show. Tell people again where they can find you and your podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. This was so much fun. You can find me at Spoilerpiece Theater. There every Friday. You can find us every podcast platform. You can also find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can also find my writing at Edge Media Network. And you can follow me on social media on Twitter at Opinioness World or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinioness.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for doing the show, and hopefully we'll get you back again sometime.
I would love that. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Max.
And my name's Pablo, and we're Galaxy, a film. Do-do-do-do-do. My name's actually Danilo, but sometimes people call me Pablo. After 11:30, baby. And speaking of 11:30 and time, 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a new episode of Galaxy of Film drops every fucking Thursday. So I don't know what you're doing on Thursday. You're gonna get ready for the new music drop, but listen to Galaxy of Film first. 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every fucking Thursday. We have a blast. We talk about new movies. We pair it with an old one. We're Galaxy of Film, baby, and we're dialed in.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about polite society. Thanks to Megan Kearns for joining me on that one. And thank you to all you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed like I said at the top of the show, we're on all the major podcast apps. So give us a subscribe or a follow or whatever that button says in that particular app that you're using. And if that app happens to have a 5-star button and you can leave us a little review, I'd really appreciate that too. It helps make sure that more people check out the show. So drop those 5-star ratings, even a 4-star. Don't go lower than that though, but preferably 5. You can also follow me on social media at PiecingPod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget about the Patreon I told you about at the top of the episode, produced by David Rosen, patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Now, let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And you know what? Why not? I'm going to play a song that I literally just started last week. I don't have a title for it yet. I'm really happy with it. It's pretty much like 99% done. I might just tweak a little bit here and there. But it'll either end up on my next album or as part of the plans that I have for 2024 that I haven't announced yet. But yeah, this is a brand new track that I just started, and hope you enjoy it. And we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.